About 5 minutes there, so go grab a beverage. Hey everyone. Welcome to the February edition of the State of the Snowpack, and what a winter we're having, eh? Quite an interesting one, and we're gonna talk about it with Wishy, but let's kick it off. So there's ways to support State of the Snowpack, and we have a raffle that will be kicking off tonight. We have a night at the Savoy Hotel, and then as well a pair of goggles from Anon that we'll be throwing out, and some hats as well. And then we have some swag that you can purchase to help us. We got some awesome touring hats, and then a nice little fleece one. I love this one for touring. And some toques. So hats 35, toques 25. And this, no, we're gonna save it for the next one. Yeah. So let's do a little land acknowledgement. So we would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on traditional ancestral unceded lands of the Sonics people, the Sayelk, and the Tanaha peoples. We feel privileged and grateful to be here and honor the ongoing presence of the Sonics on this land. We are mindful of how we carry ourselves today so as to demonstrate our intentions to honor this land, water, and all beings. So a little disclaimer with the information that we're given. The information that we present is with our own observations and to the best of our own abilities. This presentation does not replace actual avalanche training, and best to sign up for an AST or a CA course this winter. And what you do with the information that we present is your responsibility, so use it responsibly. What is State of the Snowpack? It's community conversations, saving lives in the backcountry. And our mission is to decrease backcountry avalanche incidents, casualties, and rescues through the sharing of detailed community-specific snowpack analysis, bridge the gap between Avalanche Canada's regional avalanche forecasts and local knowledge shared in the InfoX by guides, avalanche professionals, and providing as local as it gets snowpack analysis in as clear as simple terms as possible. And as well, share information gathered from our local guiding and forecasting communities, allowing locals to make the most informed decisions in the backcountry so we all make it home every night. And a little bit on our board of directors. So Morgan Dinsdale, she started this whole thing 5 years ago. And she's over in Whistler at the moment, and she still oversees the whole thing, but we now have chapters in Revelstoke, Roslyn, and here. And here was the kind of like the starting gate of it. And then we have Judson Wright, the owner of Kootenay Backcountry Guides, ACMG Guide. Jason Wishlow, Whitewater forecaster, been there for, how many years have you been there? 20 plus years? 23 years with Whitewater. And then we have Kath, that's behind the scenes. She's our legend. She crushes it with all the admin and all the marketing and helping us with the social media and putting these slideshows together. She's our lady behind the scenes. And then Morgan's father is on the board members as well. And then thank you to our sponsors. We have Hub, we have Baldface, Burden, the Savoy Hotel, and Mountain Med Consulting. And thank you to our partners, Kootenay Backcountry Guides, She Shreds Mountain Adventures, Whitewater, and this fabulous place, The Royal. And then there's many ways to get involved. First, donate, because we love it. Every penny counts. Makes a personal donation to support our local snowpack field and events teams so we can keep providing all this information for you. Sponsorship, so anyone that wants to sponsor us, jump on. Support the cause of bringing State of the Snowpack to every ski resort town across BC and become a key member of the backcountry community. And as well, become a contributor. Our regions cover an enormous amount of variable terrain. The more contributors that we have from each pocket of BC, the better we can relay the snowpack conditions. Visit our website, www.stateofthesnowpack.com, for snowpack updates, event schedules, get involved and contribute, and become a sponsor or donate. And then our Nelson event contributor team, you have myself. I'm a CA Level 2, CHGA 2 guide. I'm up at Baldface Lodge mostly. And then we have Justin Wright, owner of Cooney Backcountry Guides, as I was already kind of explaining. And then we got Wishley with Whitewater, head patroller. And then we have Julianne. She owns She Shreds Mountain, is it Mountain Adventures? Yeah, which is a sled company. And then we have Kath, our lady in behind the scenes. And then we have Shane just up here, who runs all of the live feeds and gets it to the outside world for us, which is huge because none of us know how to do this, and Shane sure does. And then tonight we have Matt McDonald, owner and lead forecaster of Alpine Weather Consultants, and pretty much the weather guru. So he'll give us some weather information tonight. We'll see what he's got to say. And then we have Wishy. He's going to talk about what's going on in our snowpack and giving us the updates on that. And then our topics from, we'll get a snowpack update from Wishy with the current conditions in the snowpack for the region, notable storms, weather events, notable layers, upcoming weather, Avalanche Canada Bulletin, notable avalanche events. And then part 2 will be Matt McDonald dialing in the weather workflow. So I'd like to allow Wishy to get on stage here. And then as well, just before Wishy jumps on stage, just within the raffle tickets, we'll do that at the intermission there. So just wait for that. And now, Wishy, come on board.
All right. Hi, everybody. And again, as usual, thanks for coming. It's always a treat to look out and see people that are coming out to hear about the snowpack and what we have to say, and hopefully we can help keep people safe and give you a little entertainment on a windy February night. So I wanted to start with this. I know Judson always likes to start, and so I borrowed this from him, and it's Redfish Creek, and gives us our water equivalency that we have compared to seasonal means. And this year, we're the black line down here, and we're right about there. And you can see comparatively to where we would be in 2022, 23, or earlier, we're at pretty low levels still. So, you know, we've had our moments where we've managed to get some snow, but at the same time, we're still sitting well below normal. I read they're calling us at 57%, I believe, of normal snowpack right now. So, you know, the middle of February, spring is sadly for a lot of, you know, us winter lovers on the horizon, and things have not been consistent or not kind of lived up to what we want. And you know, but this where we are now here in mid-February compared to where we should be is it's a little bit scary, just given the fact that we want to have significant snowfall in the mountains to build a base so that we have some a reasonable freshet and runoff, and we don't dry out and burn to the ground and all have to choke on smoke all spring and summer the way we have been. So let's hope for some, you know, spring kindness, and see if we can get this line even a little bit closer up here. Would make a big difference for all of us, never mind the fact that maybe we get to ski some sweet spring pow. So notable storms, layer formation. So December 4th and 5th and 6th, we had unprecedented rain. So Whitewater and Kootenay Pass broke records. We had 140 millimeters in 72 hours. I've never seen a rain event like that in the Kootenays during that time of the year. You know, like we have El Nino winters, we have we have rain events, but 140 millimeters is kind of obscene and something that I hope I don't have to see again. 40 centimeters followed that storm, and it gave us some hope that, you know, we were on the right track and things were going to recover. And then nothing really happened. We had that 40 centimeters, and we just kind of floated along through December. You know, it was green down here, you know, like, and usually around Christmas time, it's like we came here and Santa sang us a song, and we were all praying that we were going to get some snow for Christmas, which didn't materialize, and we were still waiting and hoping. And then we got to New Year's, and Whitewater started January with a 99 centimeter settled base at 1,950 meters. And so even at a meter at 1,950 meters, it's almost a bit of a misrepresentation, because the snowpack rapidly disappeared below 1,600 meters, or even higher, below 1,700 meters. Judson was talking about it in his snowpack talk. We just didn't really have anything. And lower elevations really had no snow. And this was me on New Year's Eve. And I was like, well, you know, I heard the dirt was good on Mountain Station, so I went and shredded mid and lower Eli, and it was fantastic. But it made me smile for a little bit and kind of put a Band-Aid on the pain, but I was really hoping that we were going to ski some POW, right? So there we are, December 31st, 23. Happy New Year? I don't know. Let's go. Finally, January 6th, it started snowing. And we got 80 centimeters in 6 days at Whitewater. And the HS reached 160 centimeters, and we were on our way. You know, this was the storm. Finally, we had a Kootenai-style storm. And we were all stoked, and the skiing was really, really good. This was after a control route. Let's hope it gets going here. But this is Mel Nelson, one of our forecasters, coming in just underneath Gopher Air there, and getting some sick turns as she makes her way down. And so I was like, okay, you know, like, we suffered through the worst of it, right? And finally we were going to turn the Kootenai pattern, what we were typically used to seeing, back on, and we were going to get after it. And then, just when we thought the winter couldn't get more weird, it got more weird. Just after that, January 11th to 16th, we got historic cold. Whitewater reached temperature of minus 32. In my 23 years working up there, I've never seen it that cold. Kootenai Pass reached just under minus 37. I think it was minus 36.7 degrees or something like that. That was the coldest temperature they'd seen recorded. And we came along with some moderate to strong easterly winds, which sadly we'll be talking about again tonight. And it was certainly winter, but it wasn't winter with snow. So it was just bitter Arctic air, and it was cold, and it was an unexpected twist. So this was me. I was down by the lake. It doesn't sound like our volume's up, but you could hear quite the commentary, and I could barely hold the phone in my hands. I think it was minus 18, and it was probably blowing about 40 or 50 kilometers an hour, and it was bitter. And I think I don't need to explain that to any of you here that lived through that, because it wasn't a pleasant time. So, and then as quickly as it arrived, the cold was gone. You know, lasted that week, and then all of a sudden, January 17th to 27th, Whitewater received around 75 centimeters of snow. So it was coming in, but with more mild temperatures. The base kind of just reached a meter 60. It settled down to a meter 50, and then it was just hovering there around $1.50 for the longest time. You know, it'd snow a little bit and settle, snow a little bit and settle. So we still weren't getting, you know, the crank and snowfalls that we were all hoping for. And then again, during that time, below around 1,200 meters, it was still just raining. So, you know, it wasn't exactly building a lot of snowpack low, which wasn't great. So, and then the atmospheric river came back. You know, if you told me during the first atmospheric river that we were going to set record lows, you know, in another 4 weeks, or I would have almost laughed. I would have gone, that's not going to happen. You know, like we're in an El Nino, we could get a cold snap, but we're not going to see minus 37 at Kootenai Pass. And then it happened, and then I thought we were through that. And if you told me we were going to get another round of warm and another atmospheric river, albeit not as significant, you know, I would have gone, okay, like what's going to happen next? So on January 27th, this is wild. On January 27th to February 3rd, Whitewater did not record a below freezing temperature. Morning, night, it didn't happen. We would warm to 4 degrees, we would cool to 1 or 2 degrees, and that is for virtually a week. We were over freezing temperatures at the end of January and the beginning of February, which is madness. That should never happen, right? But again, the weird gets weirder. So, and early in that storm, we took 30 millimeters of rain and we lost over 30 centimeters of base, and we were all of a sudden back down to $130, and we had it good because there were places on the coast that took in the hundreds of millimeters of rain, washed base away, had to close their resorts. So I was really, really glad that we were still out there and we were skiing. I know it wasn't great, but we were still open. So we had to, you know, just take it as it comes. And we were out there putting our skis on. The touring wasn't great, you know, but we were at least at it. And then you can see this is Wendy, and shout out to Wendy. She just broke her leg and has to miss the rest of her season, one of our forecasters. So I know she's watching tonight, and heal up, Wendy. We love you. But some of the cinnamon buns that were rolling, this is in goat trees. I've almost never seen anything like it. Like that's as tall as she is, you know, like, and that's what happens when you don't go below freezing for a week. You know, that stuff's supposed to happen in May. It's not supposed to happen in February. And we had a large avalanche cycle. So sadly, these pictures didn't show it very well, but you know, like up to size 2.5, and it, you know, the world started falling down. But interestingly enough, the world started falling down kind of at tree line elevations and below, and then not below tree line. It was kind of like a tree line event because below tree line didn't have enough snow to really fail the way that it was failing at tree line. And then in the Alpine, it had rained to the roof, but it's almost like it had cooled, and it didn't. There were definitely some naturals there, you know, 1.5, you know, the loose wets, but it wasn't as significant. And those were failing on a level of of facets that had formed during the cold. So again, when it gets cold, you get heat moving through the pack, and faceting, you know, makes these large square crystals. I dug a profile in trash chutes on a west aspect just before this had happened, and I saw, you know, like facets mid-pack up to 3 millimeters, which are huge. It's not something we tend to see here. And we were getting failure planes on it. So we were getting wet slabs, and we were getting loose wet avalanches, and it was a really bizarre event. And you know, even though the skiing wasn't good, it was something that was kind of interesting to see because I'd never seen anything quite like that before. So those facets may or may not kind of persist. Those things tend to round out, especially mid-pack, especially after another rain event, but I'm not going to highlight those too much. But a lot of this avalanche event, this cycle happened on those facets before it just turned to straight mush and moose sweat. So back to mountain biking. So February 3rd on Morning Mountain, I just want to highlight that low elevation after this event lost almost all its snow. I don't know how many mountain bikers there are in the crowd here. Woohoo! I love it. But so I went and rode Rise and Fry on February 3rd. I was in shorts. It was 6 degrees. I wasn't cold. You know, like I had to push through some snow towards the top. And then when I got to Rise and Fry Road, it was dreamy brown pow. And again, I'm like, this is insane. But you know, sometimes you take what it gives you, and just for novelty, I mean, I wasn't gonna go skiing in the schmoo because it was almost unskiable in the backcountry in particular. So I had another great mountain bike ride, and you know, it's just pretty wild. So, and then winter came back. Go figure. So February 3rd to 15th, we got another 55 centimeters of snow, came in with near seasonal temps, which is, and then the temperatures cooled, and it created this burly melt freeze crust at all elevations. I just want to go back a couple. I didn't mention this, but this debris from all that event, you know, the giant pinwheels, the avalanche debris. If you're in runouts where you see that debris, it's exposed now, and that stuff is frozen solid, and it's terrifying. You know, like just trying to get over top of it if you're crossing it it's really, really challenging and difficult. So just really be aware of it. And sometimes, and now it's kind of been blown by the wind maybe in places, but some of that stuff could be lurking just under the snow if you can't see it. And that stuff is scary business because it's hard and some of it's big. So just try to stay away from it if you encounter any of it. So February 2nd, that's when it kind of cooled and it got buried by a little bit of snowfall. And so now we have this melt freeze crust. And this melt freeze crust is varying degrees of thickness. I'm going to show you a profile in a minute. It was over 40 centimeters thick when we dug in our Whitewater weather plot. Pencil to knife crust, which you would seem to think was impenetrable, but the thing is, you never know. And with a winter like this especially, you don't know. So this crust temporarily is, or maybe long-term, is bridging lower weaknesses, and our primary concern is the recent snow which has fallen on top of it or been transported by wind. But I mean, during this last week, I mean, how many people got after it and went out there and skied some POW because the skiing was really quite good, you know? Sun came out and you could go find some places, supportive crust skiing. It was beautiful, right? So, you know, we take our moments. So, and I just want to give you a note on bridge strength. That so bridging is a term we use to describe a crust, preventing failure of layers below it. But even though this February 2nd crust is extremely significant, never trust 100% that it's going to stop the triggering of a weak layer below it. You know, we can't say for certain there's variable distribution, elevation aspect, and you could hit an area that's thin to thick where maybe you trigger something unexpected. You know, is that likely? I'm going to say no, it isn't with this crust because this crust is present everywhere. But don't look at something like the bridge strength of a crust and say, hey, you know, it's good to go. I don't have to worry about lower weaknesses because that can change. It can change as temperatures fluctuate wildly, which they have, things can facet lower, they can facet below that crust where it's not as thick. And so always keep that in the back of your mind, that because that crust is there does not necessarily mean that it's totally good to go. So bridges, as you can see by the picture here, do fail. And that's from the Coquihalla Atmospheric River of 2021, I believe, yeah. So the roller coaster winter continues. And the past 2 weeks have seen minor snow amounts, clear periods between small systems, and this has facilitated the creation of 3 surface hoar layers in the top 50 centimeters of snow that are sitting on top of the February 2nd crust. The most significant appears to be the Valentine surface hoar. So that's when it was buried. Again, we date our layers when the snow falls on top of them and buries them, not when they were formed. So, you know, you can have a surface hoar layer that's, that grows out of the surface on a cold, clear night, January 27th, and if it doesn't snow till February 27th, it's going to be the February 27th surface hoar. And God, I hope that never happens, because the surface hoar would probably be like 25 centimeters. But that Valentine's Day surface hoar was up to 8 millimeters, which is a fairly significant size, you know, enough to cause reactions. The ones below it were a little bit smaller than that, but, you know, definitely present. And then another twist. This surface hoar may have been removed in exposed alpine tree line locations to a significant wind event that occurred yesterday and today. So now we get the wind. So this is a screenshot from our weather. We have our weather link. We have an anemometer at the top of the Raven Chair, and we have an anemometer at the top of Blasters Ridge. So we get our wind readings. This is the one from the top of Blasters Ridge. And you can see our high wind speeds. That was at 8 o'clock this morning when I screenshotted this. We are pushing 60 kilometers an hour. Those winds persisted most of the day at Whitewater. And it was probably even more than that at times at the Raven, you know, maybe 60 or 70 kilometers an hour. The higher elevation you got, the stronger the winds were going, exposed locations. At any rate, the wind was hooning. So the last 2 days, again, moderate to extreme northeast to southeast winds. So generally easterly, which is a reverse loading pattern. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And yesterday, I was up at Whitewater, and the wind came in. It started in the morning, and it was unexpected. We weren't quite expecting the winds to be as strong as they were when we got to work, but the plumes coming off the peak were crazy. You know, like you're just watching the snow just blow into Neverland. And you know, east winds, and I find in particular east winds at Whitewater, when they start to go, they change things really, really rapidly. And it never ceases to amaze me how fast those winds change things. Hey, Brandon? We started to see naturals and rider-triggered avalanches to size 2. I'll show you a couple of those in a minute. But the low-density snow from the recent colder temperatures had been redistributed and made for challenging conditions as well. So starting to build wind slab, and then it changed, and it reaches a tipping point really quite quickly. And all of a sudden, things started to fire, you know, like, and had the day been longer, I think people been out there for another couple more hours. You probably would have seen some of those size 1s that people were kicking off turning into 1.5s or bigger, just because the wind was changing it almost by the minute at that stage of the game. So here's some wind slab skier accidentals from Valentine's Day yesterday. So this one, significantly enough, was in Lone Pine, which is a northwest aspect at Treeline. Suspected accidental, size 2. I can't confirm that. We never got a chance to talk to the people who triggered that. But crowns were up to 50 centimeters. It had loaded, you know, Lone Pine comes up over here, but it had loaded and it fetches off of West Weimer, which has a lot of snow available for transport, loaded it into the top of that start zone, and that was triggered. But you can see two of our forecasters on our observation mission here, and you can see the size of the debris field, and it's definitely not small. So I'm glad that nobody was involved in that. And this one was on H8, southwest aspect, 2,250 meters. And this one was a size 1.5, maybe a big 1.5, and no suspected involvement. But again, you can see this person skied a pretty bold line off the top. It was pretty crazy, but then triggered this and ran down here and managed, when they triggered it, looked like right around here. And there were crowns in there again, probably up to 40 centimeters deep, and just kind of made their way down and out the side. But just to reiterate, you're out there and the wind is blowing like that and it starts to pick up. Just please be aware that those conditions change really, really quickly. And wind slab builds, and all of a sudden it will reach a tipping point. And, you know, and the other factor to keep in mind here is that this is failing wind slab on knife resistance melt freeze crust. So even if it's a small pocket, it doesn't even have to be a pocket the size of this room. It could be a pocket the size of this stage. But if you start moving on a melt freeze crust and you can't self-arrest, even though it could be a 1.5, if it knocks you off your feet and you can't stop, you know, the reality is that injury becomes well in play for something like that. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. So wind slab and reverse loading creates significant challenges. We're all used to like southwest as our prevailing, and you know, southeast even at times, you know, kind of loads our start zones in a typical pattern. But all of a sudden we get northeasts or strong easterlies, and it's loading from different places. And it's not like south or easterly winds, just load onto west aspects or anything. What happens is when the wind's blowing that hard, the wind starts to really swirl. It uses terrain features and it starts to move snow, and it cross loads features, and things change. So even though the wind's kind of prevailing there, all of a sudden it's really ass backwards on what it is that we might be expecting to see. So, you know, like when we're getting reverse loading patterns, it's a really, really good time to start paying attention to a lot of different factors that are around you, because you can see wind slabs in places that you wouldn't expect to see wind slabs, areas that you might think are safe that really aren't. So you have to really up your caution game, I think, and make sure you're paying attention. The one thing about wind slabs is that generally you can see them. Whether you're going to trigger them or not is debatable, but you know that they're there. But you know, they can be really, really variable, and you could be standing on top of it 1 minute. And I was talking to Judson earlier, and you know, like he was out touring today, and it's like boilerplate. It's pencil. You're standing on top of it, and then all of a sudden it becomes breakable, and you don't know if you find that right pocket where maybe you break through it and you can trigger something. So this is on. Oh, I want to see if I can, for some reason, not play that. This is on top of White Queen today. I asked Douglas Noble, our forecasting supervisor, who was out there, to get me some pictures or video. But if you see quickly here, you can see how hard the wind's blowing, and you can see the inconsistency. I'm sure they were standing right on top of it there, and they were, you know, they were in it. And Douglas is probably blowing like at least 50 or 60 K up there, or probably more than that. So the wind hammering away and doing its thing. So please be aware of those reverse loading. But was it windy everywhere? No, no, it wasn't. Strangely, talked to Wiggles. He was guiding a bald face. They're on Ridgetop, and it was really pretty calm there. Talking to Judson, he was out touring today, guiding in 5 Mile, And he said west aspects were somewhat untouched. He sent me this picture, and you can still see some tracks in here, whereas other places that was all tracked out yesterday in different aspects were completely blown over and flat. So, you know, that's the other thing. Even though it's like crazy hooning winds, there's some areas that were untouched. Brandon, another one of our forecasters, was up north today. You know, like, so places like Kokanee or whatever, maybe didn't see the wind the same way. So that's where, you know, trying to get your best local beta on what's happening out there is really advantageous, because, you know, just because we got it at Whitewater, it sounded like Kootenai Pass got it, doesn't necessarily mean that the wind was blowing that way everywhere. You know, these events, and maybe Matt could speak to that far better than I can, but you know, just because we're getting 80-kilometer-an-hour easterly winds doesn't mean that those winds are happening everywhere. And something else to be aware of, I just wanted to throw this in almost to remind myself, but the sun has been poking out the last couple days, and even with winds like this, strong radiant effect, you know, clear days, we're starting to see a sun crust on it's a thin sun crust, but on steep solar aspects. So again, for people that don't know, you know, like, because it's south doesn't always mean it's going to collect the same amount of sun. So as a slope steepens, it faces the sun a lot more. So when we talk about steep solar aspects, it's because it's tipped down, the sun is shining directly on it, so it has the chance to get after the snow surface. And there have been some loose wet recorded in places because they're on a steep solar aspect. But you think about it, the sun's up there. As it steepens, it shines, it comes, it kind of glances off, and it doesn't have the same opportunity to create a crust. So be aware on some solar aspects, and that sun crust may well have little pockets of wind slab on top of it, variable distribution. It might be on the surface because the wind's blowing so hard it could blow the snow all over the place. So, notable layers. I kept rock, trees, stumps, and alder in there because lower elevations, it's still a thing, you know, like, if you're gonna ski below 1,500 meters right now, if you're out touring, you know, like, even if you're touring in 5 Mile, you can feel a transition where all of a sudden you're like, wow, the coverage really isn't very good. And then we have basal facets and crusts in there that are, you know, like, kind of tightening up because the snowpack virtually got moist to ground during that last atmospheric river event at the end of February, or the beginning of February. The December melt freeze crust from the atmospheric river is still there. And then we have the February 2nd atmospheric river and melt freeze crust. And now we have the Valentine's surface hoar. I just put that in there. There's 3 surface hoars, but you know, that might be in sheltered locations, and you know, once we have wind slab on top of that, maybe in a sheltered location, it's going to be easy to trigger, or storm slab forms. That thing's it's something to pay attention to. And then we have this current wind slab that I was just talking about. That's the real deal. That you know, that slab, you know, is, and now it's pretty wildly variable. Where you're going to find that, how you're going to find that, it's significant enough to find a pocket to run or not, but it's still there, and that possibility of triggering that wind slab is still there. So, there we go. This is a profile we dug yesterday, Whitewater, at our weather plot. So, 1,950 meters north aspect. And how many people here are familiar with looking at a snow profile, just so I know what's going on? Few people here. Okay, so I'm going to show you. You see this down here, there's a K. K means knife hardness. So when we dig in the snow, we look, and if it's so hard you can only stick a knife into it, it's knife hardness. On this side, it's fist hardness, so you can easily stick your fist in it, and then it goes to forefinger, one finger, pencil, and knife. So looking at this snow profile, you know, we're kind of like pencil, and then to knife, and then more pencil snow, and then to knife, and then to knife. This is this February 2nd melt freeze crust. And I mean, that's just a giant block of ice basically at the bottom of the snowpack. It's kind of crazy to see a profile like that. On this side here, these red dots indicate the temperature of the snow. So this is 0 degrees. You got to think yesterday the air temperature, where's our air temperature here, was like -11 or something when we dug this profile. So it's basically 0 until like 80 centimeters below the snow surface. And then gradually it comes up, and then when you get to the less dense snow, then it goes and it meets -12 of an air temperature. So this, what's happening in here right now, is a good thing for the lower snowpack, because that's really promoting a lot of bonding. You know, that's basically freezing together, and that's really, really good. But the one thing I want to highlight about a snow profile that is specific to one location. You know, you can dig here, and we can see that this snow profile does not mean that these conditions exist everywhere. They could not exist, you know, like 500 meters away. They certainly couldn't exist on the other side of the valley on a south aspect. And like we saw with the wind already today, they might certainly not exist the same way at Baldface, you know. But in general, I would say a profile that looks like this is, you know, pretty good news for stability, other than what's happening on the top here. So top 50 centimeters now heavily wind affected in exposed terrain. Surface hoar layers are likely gone in exposed location where the wind really, really got after it, because the wind would have almost blown that 50 centimeters to smithereens and then loaded it into different places. Surface hoar is not going to survive that. We had no significant failures to testing, but there was limited slab density over the crust. So when I talk slab density, you know, like a slab that you trigger, you know, forefinger trending to, you know, like one finger or pencil wind slab, then the density of the snow increases. But, you know, when we did this profile, this was generally like fist to forefinger minus snow. It's like super low dense snow. So that snow doesn't hold together to really have too much slab property to trigger or propagate or anything like that. And we still really need to watch how this new wind slab will bond to the crust wherever it is. You know, like colder temperatures, warmer, you know, we might have seen some faceting. We'll see what comes with the weather in the next little while, and how that new snow and what comes in and how that all kind of bonds to that crust, because that crust is a very, very significant bed surface. So anywhere else getting snow? Not really. You know, we're not alone in this very below average winter. As I was talking earlier, the coast got hit significantly hard during this past atmospheric river. You know, even a place like Whistler at elevation took a significant hit. It's not like you know, even upper elevations were spared there. Like, it rained to the roof just about everywhere. Interior in the Rockies, we all have well below average snowpacks for this time of year compared to where we should be. And that last atmospheric river hit south. Utah and California, I know, received some snow, and they managed to stay cold enough. But I still think they're below historical averages for sure. It's not like the skiing's been great there anywhere. So, you know, like, it's been a strange winter across the board, and whether misery loves company or not, you know, like, we're kind of all on this arc together right now. So AVCAN danger ratings, as of I took this today, So February 15th, 24, valid until February 16th, tomorrow at 4 o'clock. AvCan's calling it moderate in the Alpine, moderate at tree line and low below tree line, and that's consistent with what they're forecasting for Saturday and Sunday as well. And their problems are calling a storm slab and a wind slab. So their storm slab may be more reactive on solar aspects where the new snow sits on a thin sun crust or in lee features. They're saying all aspects, alpine and tree line. And it's possible to trigger, size 1 to size 2 avalanches. Second problem is the wind slab and alpine and tree line elevations again. All aspects possible, size 1 to 2. Expect newly formed wind slab avalanches to be found just below ridgetop and at the bottom of steep features. One thing I'll kind of talk to you about really quickly, but below ridgetop, like the snow blows from one side, loads into the other side. But when we see wind events like we are seeing today, a lot of that snow sublimates, so it just basically evaporates. It's blowing so hard, especially if it's cold. But what happens is the snow eventually can blow and blow farther down. So start zones can migrate instead of immediately on a ridgetop. All of a sudden you get down 5, 6, 8, 10 turns, and then the snow is blown there. So that's where you might see reactivity of these wind slabs. So that's something to pay attention to when the wind has been blowing as hard as it has. Terrain and travel advice: watch for signs of instability like whooping, hollow sounds, shooting cracks, or recent avalanches. As always, investigate the bond of the recent snow to that February 2nd crust, and start with conservative lines and watch for clues of instability. Avalanche summary: Wednesday, near Nelson, east of Kelowna, numerous large size 2 wind slab avalanches initiated with explosives. And then a large size 2 skier triggered avalanche on the southwest aspect occurred following a period of moderate and northeast winds. So I talked about our avalanches that we were seeing in the Whitewater backcountry adjacent to the resort. And then again, a few wet loose avalanches reported on Tuesday from solar aspects, steep solars. Snowpack summary, we've kind of got into the nuts and bolts of that, but another thing to remember is we at Whitewater were fortunate when it started snowing again. We ended up with about 50 centimeters of snow, but as you transition farther north, might be down to 30 centimeters, not quite as much snow sitting on top of that crust, and you might be able to feel it more if you're venturing out of the Nelson area to go touring. And the confidence, they're saying, is moderate only, and due to the speed, direction, or duration of the wind. We saw things kind of get crazy and its effect on the snowpack. So, and the confidence is due to a stable weather pattern. Little change is expected, unfortunately, for several days. So our weather forecast. This is a model. So when you see this, that means that it's going to snow. So this is until next Thursday, and there's not a lot of this. They're saying about 6 millimeters on, this is a GEM model, a Canadian model. And Matt can explain this far better than I can, but key things for us here, just generally to look at, you can see temperatures kind of staying cold. And here's our temperatures at 2,100 meters and 1,600 meters that they do for forecast. So this is minus 12, but you can generally see that the trend is to warm. And then you see these 2 little blips here, and there's a 0 there. So that just means you're looking, and there's, you can see here that the freezing level when these things happen might come up above 1,600 meters. Base lodge at Whitewater's 1,640 meters. So in general, temperatures are starting to moderate on the rise from where they are right now, and there's not a whole lot of significant snow that's in the immediate forecast for us, unfortunately. So again, temperatures remain cold, Whitewater, and the wind should abate in the next couple days, moderate, and then the flow switches to southeast, bringing a milder and a chance of light, milder air and a chance of light flurries. Monday and Tuesday, 5 to 10 millimeters forecast. We saw 6 on that model. Different models can forecast different things. And then it goes to a bit more of a southerly flow and rising freezing levels. And we're hoping that they hold below 1,600 meters, but we're into February, you know, and especially if the sun comes out now, temperatures, especially on solar slopes, are going to jump a lot higher than that. And I'm going to leave the longer range stuff and a lot more of the weather nuance to Matt, because he's the guy to speak to it. So we always like to ask this question, but anybody in the room here have any avalanche experiences they want to share in the last little while that, you know, maybe we haven't heard about on a min? Because these things always help all of us keep informed. So if anybody was involved or saw something, you know, has the courage to say, hey. And if not, that's cool too. You can come. Oh, hello. There, this thing keeps cutting out. So tonight's takeaways. Snowpack is still thin. We only have 160 centimeters right now in mid-February, and that snowpack tapers again quite quickly below 1,400 meters. Recent winds created highly variable wind slab on non-typical aspects, so be very aware of that. And there's still no significant load on surface hoar layers or the February 2nd crust to really see if it's bonding well or not. You know, like if we had 80 centimeters of storm slab, we'd really be able to see if it was bonding well to that or not. But we really, it's been interesting. We haven't had that test. And solar effects only going to increase as we move our way into spring here. You know, like February 15th, you know, March is around the corner, and yeah, the sun's going to create a whole lot more heat these days than it did even a few weeks ago. So I'm going to give you another goat slide PSA. So let's keep spreading the awareness about ski area boundaries, and repeat after me. Goat slide is out of bounds and is backcountry, right? It's backcountry. And if we all remind people about the dangers of the significant avalanche terrain that they could be headed into without any knowledge or gear, you know, it could help save someone getting into a really bad situation. And I know it's, you know, it's hard to see people heading out there and, you know, to say anything, but, you know, like a little heads up, hey, you know where you're going? Like, I saw an avalanche there the other day, or the wind's been blowing, or whatever, might make a big difference. And I just want to show, again, if you want to come have a look at my computer after, like the amount of tracks in there is, and that's taken yesterday. I bet there were almost twice as many people that skied down that than skied Bonanza, and that's not even a joke. It was smashed. Like when we say moguls, like it's moguled in there. Yeah, Bonanza. Grooming's been sick. Nothing wrong with hooning a groomer. So before I go, I'm just going to hand the mic over to Judson Wright, Kootenai Backcountry Guides, and he just wants to have a quick skin track discussion about something that he saw on 5 Mile. And I want to thank everybody for coming out, thank everybody for listening, getting yourself educated, and we really, really appreciate it. And let's keep spreading the word, State of the Snowpack, and let's all come home safe. So thanks everybody, and have a great night. And if you ever have any questions, come talk to me now, come talk to us at Whitewater. We're always really, really happy to help you out.
Right on. Thanks, Wishy. Yeah, cool. So yesterday, probably my best day of the year. Anybody out yesterday? How was yesterday? Amazing. And then how was today? Yeah, good. Yes. Awesome. So it depends on where you were, right? Like I pulled the pin mostly on today. I ended up with one person. I started with like 7 and people just peeled off. That's what it was like out there. And then, so that's how quickly things can change. And then just thinking about Wishy too, talking about the winters, I actually look back on the Whitewater stats, and the lowest snowpack in the last, since 92, 93, so that, what is that, like 30 years, is 169 centimeters. And that was in the year that I moved here in 2001. So we've got to beat that, basically. That's what we got to beat out there. So really quick, I just want to, like, snowpack is cool. Everyone loves the snow. But terrain is what dictates everything and saves lives out there. When you know terrain and we all work together for the terrain, right, and work in the same way, we can keep everything safer. So I was out there on January 18th and actually saw this skin track get put up in 5 Mile that I've never seen before. And the skin track goes through here. And Zorroed it. Like, Zorroing is the Z that you put in through it. And I'm not here to like lecture anything or be a gatekeeper, but just want to discuss about the differences in the variance of where skin tracks can get put. And the people there actually had a conversation with locals about the skin track, and then it got established. And now that it's established, everyone seems to be using it because the skin track is still there and people are still going up it. In this past weekend, it was used and it goes right through there. And I just wanted to say that that is not the normal place that the skin track goes. That doesn't necessarily mean that the normal place it goes is always better. But there are differences between putting a skin track here and where it normally goes over here. And what are those things? Anyone? Yeah, you're choosing the smaller terrain and the lesser consequence by going around. The other thing you're doing here, in addition to keeping yourself into more hazard, is you're putting a skin track right through the middle of the prime skiing. And when you Zorro it, you take a whole line out. So there is like no more skiing through here, which is incredible. Don't get me wrong, these are the fingers. This is the fingers in 5 Mile. Also probably one of the prime lines. But generally the track kind of goes like this and does a bit of a curve, whereas this Zorroed. And so what I'm seeing more and more is just more skin tracks going in places. There's an established track and then people use it, and then another track goes in, and often they end up at the same place. So there are different ways to skin a cat, but we should work on knowing what the established routes are. I don't have a huge solution to that unless we come here and turn this into State of the Skin track, which I don't want to do, right? But still, there is other ways to do it in using the established lines. Lately, sometimes when a skin track gets steep, I don't want to use it, right? And then I build my own. But the thing is, when I build my own, then I'm polluting the area with skin tracks. And on a winter like this, where it doesn't snow a lot, it's about kind of farming and making sure we're not putting them in everywhere, right? The skin track went right up the middle of Weimer Bowl as well earlier last week. Somebody went right up Weimer Bowl. So the other thing when you're doing this over here is you're making it awkward for everybody else, being like, are we going to ski over top of that person? So I always try to tuck my skin tracks in, out of hazard, out of the way, and trying not to pollute them, and trying to do as little Zorros as I can. That's all. That is all. And yeah, it's busy out there. It's getting busy. Last Saturday was probably this Saturday was one of the busiest days. I wasn't there, but the past Saturday was one of the busiest days apparently ever in 5 Mile when this skin track was getting used. It's getting busier, and yeah, we're all just got to work together and have those conversations. I always ask people around me when I run into them, where are you going? What are you doing? And then I know what's going on, and I'm not trying to steal your lines. We're not out there trying to steal each other's lines. We're trying to work together, right? Right on. Okay, thanks everybody. We got Mike coming up here. Yeah, Wishy.
Oh, I just got breaking news, I guess, but good news. But we were just talking avalanches, and then Douglas, somebody had sent this, Douglas Noblet, our forecasting supervisor, but apparently today, so it can happen, a south skier accidental on a south aspect. looks like maybe climbing up the backside of West Weimer, you know, and the sun there, but 2 people involved, no injuries, a lost ski pole, 40 to 45 centimeters deep, 20-meter wide pocket, and these people went for about a 20-meter ride. So again, you know, like, to me it would make sense with east winds loaded into a place like that, it's there. So, you know, like, it's always, and that's generally not a place where you're really worried about wind slab, but on a reverse loading event like that, that happened today. Had a picture, I would have put this in, but you know, avalanches happen, and sometimes when you're not expecting them. So intermission raffle, please buy a ticket, help support us. You could win a free night stay. And we got a pair of Anon goggles and, you know, maybe a couple toques or a hat from State of the Snowpack. And get yourself loaded up with another cold drink, and we're going to listen to the weather guru, Matt, giveaway. So Instagram course giveaway. Win a spot in Whitewater Ski Resort and Mountain Meteorology Consulting life-saving course buried. Here we go. No sound. Anyway, watch it. It's a great course. Be great to know how to help your friends once you dig them out. Talk a whole lot about how to find people, but bottom line is once you dig out your friend, if you don't know what to do to help them, that's another serious piece of the puzzle. So, you know, this is a great thing from Instagram, and please, you know, so like I say, let's buy raffle tickets and get a chance to win a great entry to a course.
And then, yeah, so everyone, how to enter for this Instagram contest. First, go on and like the post. And this is on State of the Snowpack and Mountain Med Consulting. And then as well, go follow State of the Snowpack, go follow Mountain Med Consulting, Whitewater Ski Resort. Take your friends. Each comment is 1 entry. And then for bonus entries, we receive you receive 3 bonus entries with a $10 donation to State of the Snowpack. And this contest only is running from February 16th to February 23rd. And the winner will be announced on February 26th. So you got a week to do it. And then, yeah, little intermission, and then Matt McDonald will come out. So everyone give a warm welcome to Matt here.
Thanks, buddy. Alrighty. Good evening, Nelson. Stoked to be here. Yeah, what a rad crowd. Look at you beautiful people, all hungry for powder. I do have some good news that'll come towards the end here. Just to kind of gauge the crowd, how many, stick up your hand if you've taken an AST before. All right, solid. Stick up your hand if you've taken a intro weather course with the CAA. Okay, a couple of those, all right. Well, I'm definitely a weather geek. We're gonna geek it up hard here in the next 40 minutes or so. But yeah, stoked to be here. Thanks to Wiggles for inviting me. Actually first met Wiggles and Morgan, for those of you who know her, kind of the OG creator of State of the Snowpack 6 years ago, I think it was, in a weather course. And they were already kind of planting the seed back then of what this was all going to be. And here we are, like 5-6 years later, and it's really cool to see it with legs. So, where are we going here? We're going to talk about this forecaster funnel concept. For those of you who have taken some weather training, this is not just a gimmick. This is how we do it as professionals. I do lots of trainings here in the interior with Baldface, Retallic, Stellar, Whitewater, MOT, and this is what we talk about. We talk about the forecaster funnel. It's really going to set you up for success. We're going to geek out big time in flow patterns. Really, if you get through your whole weather and you haven't figured out what the flow is, you kind of missed a big chunk. And then I'll leave you with some resources, and if we have time, we'll talk about the rest of winter, because that's the million-dollar question here these days. So, some of my goals here, hit home on the importance of this forecaster funnel concept. Again, it's really fundamental when I'm sitting down at my computer to look at the weather for the day. This is what I look at. We're going to talk about the power of atmospheric flow, and going to leave you with some pro tips on how to use these sexy tools that's all on our phones these days, like Windy and Spot WX. So, this is what we're talking about, the forecaster funnel. I'm just going to move this before I trip. As you'll notice, on the left-hand side, we're talking about scale. So the key here is when you sit down and look at your weather, hopefully it's on a home computer. It's kind of tricky to do on a cell phone. The screens are too small. You want to start big. And global is a bit of an exaggeration. I'm not going to go spend my time looking at like Japan and Australia as much as I'd love to be in Japan land right now. But yeah, we're kind of talking the northeastern corner of the Pacific Ocean. And you'll notice on the right-hand side here is the time pyramid. And fancy word here, inversely proportional, meaning that the larger the scale, the less time you're spending there. So global scale, northeastern Pacific, quick and dirty, maybe a minute or two. When I work with guiding operations, I always encourage them to load up like a satellite loop of the northeastern Pacific and just animate it and kind of stare at it for a bit. Use it as a conversational piece as guides are trickling in into the room. And the idea here is that you're trying to figure out where your weather is coming from. Once you're done at that scale, you'll kick it down to what we call the synoptic scale. So now we're talking about the size of British Columbia, maybe a little bit of Alberta, but you're starting to zoom in your scale. And this is where you're going to pick out your highs, your lows, your cold fronts, your warm fronts. You're trying to figure out why are we getting the weather that we're getting, or lack thereof. And then down at what we call the mesoscale, this is where it gets really tricky. Okay, so this is when you're drilling down into your tenure, into your backcountry ski mission area for the day. This is where we earn our keep as mountain meteorologists. Things get really tricky here, and this is where models don't do quite that well of a job. And so knowing your terrain, knowing your local effects, your microclimates, this is where it happens. And I say 5 to 10 minutes. Obviously, you guys have better things to do than just look at weather for hours upon hours. That's my job. But yeah, sometimes it gets really tricky here, and you can spend upwards of 45 minutes to an hour. All right. I often hear the feedback, Matt, I don't have time for your forecaster funnel mumbo jumbo. Just give me the damn forecast. And people just go directly to tools like this. These are two of my favorites. Windy.com, fantastic app for free. They give you access to arguably the best weather model in the world, namely the European model. Spot WX ran out of a basement in Winnipeg by a fellow named Garth. No joke. This is also fantastic. Snowforecast.com, a lot of people use this. If you love setting yourself up for disappointment, by all means. But yeah, try and avoid this one. But again, the point here is if you're skipping over the forecaster funnel and you're just going to a tool like one of these, you're really putting all your eggs in one basket and you're putting all your faith into a computer model. And weather models have come a long way over the years, but they're not perfect. And if they were, I wouldn't be standing here, I wouldn't have a job. But yeah, the forecaster funnel, it's really going to set you up for success. So here's one of my favorite tools when I sit down at my computer. First thing, 9 out of 10 times, I'll be staring at a satellite loop. I really enjoy focusing a lot of my energy in looking at reality before being drawn into the sexy land that is weather models. And so this is just a satellite. This is up in space, staring down at the atmosphere, and you're getting to see reality. It's like a webcam, but like way up in the space. And when you stare at this from a bit, so this is from today. This is an animation from this morning, starting yesterday into this morning. And you just kind of want to, stare at this. It's almost hypnotic. And just ask yourself, okay, where's my weather coming in from today? Does it look juicy and moist, or does it look dry? And so I'm seeing, this relatively dry air mass that's trying to push down from the north, and then I see this thing that looks kind of exciting, but it just stalls right at the border there, right? So we had a little bit of cloud moving in from the south today, kind of looked excitable. I was staring at the Kootenay Pass webcam. We do forecast for them throughout the winter. And they got a couple flakes, but it was just really stalled, right? It wasn't making its way too much further north. So this is called a water vapor satellite image. Again, is kind of one of my two go-to tools to start off. And this is all the resources I'm going to be showing you here tonight are from the Avalanche Canada Mountain Weather Forecast. I'm one of the proud creators of that when I worked at Environment Canada, and left it in really good hands when I left 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah, all this stuff is freely, publicly available, and is a great starting point for your forecaster funnel. So again, this is the scale we're talking about at the global scale. So you're looking at kind of the entirety of the Northeastern Pacific, and you're just getting a feel for what's coming at you and how fast. Once we're done with some reality, then I will shift into model land. This is what we call a 500 millibar chart. Admittedly, this probably looks like the dog's breakfast to you. There's a lot going on here, and we're gonna spend some time talking about these charts here tonight because they're awesome. There's a ton of information in here. And when we were building the Avalanche Canada Mountain Weather Forecast, so this is generated every day by Environment Canada meteorologists. We kind of argued for a while. There was like 3 or 4 of us, creating this thing, and we were like, well, what's the first chart we're going to put on the landing page? And so if you go to this mountain weather forecast, this is the first chart that you'll find. And again, we'll talk about just how much information is packed in here. But this is a good example of what we're talking at the synoptic scale. So you're starting to kind of zoom into BC. You're looking for your highs, like that H, or you're looking for the lows, like so. And you're just trying to get a feel on what your synoptic feature is. And so this is from this morning, and kind of the big driving feature right now is just this massive honking ridge of high pressure over the Yukon. We've got this little fizzly low off the coast of Washington, but it just doesn't have enough oomph to really get into us. I should mention that 500 millibars, we're kind of talking midway up in the atmosphere. So in this forecaster funnel approach, you're starting zoomed out and you're gradually zooming in, but you're also starting from high up in the atmosphere and you're gradually lowering down to where we all live and play. So 500 millibars, just remember the number 5, it's about 5 kilometers up in the atmosphere, okay? And the beauty about this elevation is that you're way above ridgetop, pretty much in all of Western Canada, right? Our highest peaks around these parts are 2,400 meters. So at 5 kilometers, it's nice and clean up there, and I really trust the models up at this elevation, okay? As we get lower down, that's when things start to get tricky and dirty. And then we have these surface charts. So again, from the Avalanche Canada Mountain Weather Forecast, we've got our surface charts. So now we're kicking it down to where we all live and play and recreate. We're down at the surface, so now we have a surface high. This would be an upper high. This is a surface high. And lo and behold, we just have way too much high pressure for my liking these days. But we've had some beautiful sunny days, so there's that. And then you can see here the forecasters depicted, you know, cloudy, chance of flurries, but you can see that most of the action is, again, south of the border. Okay, so following me on this adventure, we got our global scale, we had a satellite animation, we kick it down to the synoptic scale with one of your hopefully new favorite charts, the 500 millibar chart, and then this surface chart, okay? So maybe that took us like 3-4 minutes to kind of wrap our head around. And then lo and behold, this is where things get tricky, and you're gonna start going towards a tool like this. Again, when we were building the Avalanche Canada Mountain Weather Forecast, it's kind of a mouthful, you know, appreciating that this forecast is the entirety of BC, the Rockies, and the Yukon. So there's no way we could crank out 3,000 spot forecasts, right? It's just too much work day in, day out. So really what we offer you are these 2 first steps of the forecaster funnel, the global scale and the synoptic scale, and then we leave it to the user to go and figure this part out, okay? So we'll wrap up tonight talking about tips and tricks at this scale, but we'll spend quite a bit of time here talking about the flow at the synoptic scale. So I'm going to kind of walk you through how we design the mountain weather forecast and just what I propose, and this is more or less what I do on a daily basis when I'm forecasting weather. So yeah, this should be your starting point. It's my homepage. I open up my browser every morning, and I'm like, what were these guys thinking? Grab myself a little cup of tea, get comfy, and just, yeah, pretty straightforward to read through the synopsis. And then again, here's that 500 millibar chart, right? So hopefully, lift up your hand if you've never been to this website. You've probably been living in oh, wow. Are you guys from out of town? Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's funny, Avalanche Canada, as much as they hate to admit it, this is the #1 most hit page on their entire website. This thing gets upwards of 50,000 clicks a day. And what's really rad about this is it's offered 365 days a year. So even outside of winter season, we keep this thing going all year long. So yeah, really easy URL, avalanche.ca/weather, and yeah, tons of really good stuff. There's 2 meteorologists, I think this is my next slide, that spend upwards of like 5 to 7 hours every single day cranking this thing out. And the fact that it's offered to you guys for free is pretty rad. And this stems back to like the 80s, 90s. It was just an agreement between Environment Canada, Parks Canada, and Avalanche Canada. So yeah, they crank this thing out every morning at 4 a.m. The intention there is ready for most guides meetings. Guides wake up really and like to chit-chat about weather and avalanche conditions. So the idea being that, sorry, coming back, it's ready first thing in the morning. Historically, it used to be only written by meteorologists at the Pacific Storm Prediction Center in Vancouver. And then all the people in the interior are like, you guys are way too coast-centric. And we're like, yeah, we are. So we started including forecasters from Edmonton to kind of be more inclusive, if you will, of the Columbia and the Rockies, right? So, and admittedly, these people in Edmonton just have a lot more expertise than coastal people when it comes to forecasting weather for the Rockies. So every day, those 2 sets of forecasters meet up and they kind of agree on the weather story, and lo and behold, crank out this thing. Really important to appreciate that anything written is obviously from a human. We're not quite using AI yet, but everything on the right-hand side here is automated. So just kind of use the stuff on the right with caution. It's really good, but this is really where the value is in this forecast as well as in the day 1, day 2 tabs. All right. So yeah, let's talk about this chart here. Now we're really going to geek out. I want to take a big sip of beer for this one. Okay, so we're up at 5 kilometers in the atmosphere. We're way above ridgetop. And again, things behave the way you'd expect them to. Kind of textbook fluid dynamics here, where, the flow is really clean. And so when I talk about the flow, this is the level in the atmosphere that I want you to zoom in on, is the 500 millibar chart. And so let's just break this thing down. You'll always have a timestamp. So this one's from quite a few years ago. Timestamp showing you when it's valid. And then the blobs of gray are cloud cover, so forecasted cloud cover by a weather model. In green and yellow and sometimes peachy red is the total amount of precip forecasted per 12-hour period. So that's how much precip is going to fall over 12 hours. And then the things I really want you to zoom in on here are these black lines. Okay, these they're called contours at 500 millibars, and this is what's going to explain your flow. Okay, because again we're way above ridgetop, above trees, peaks, buildings, all that stuff that creates complications. The flow is what we call geostrophic. It means it's super clean and it's going to flow perfectly parallel to these contour lines. Okay. So when you're looking at this, picture like a topographic map, the maps that we all use to go into the backcountry. And this is your gradient, your pressure gradient, essentially. And as you all know, our weather comes from the west, generally speaking. And so these lines are going to meander throughout the season, throughout the winter, and take on different orientations. And the reason why these are so important is because when you look at these, again, the flow is going to be perfectly parallel to these contour lines. So here's Vancouver Island. Here we are just north of the Idaho Panhandle. We live in this beautiful part of the province. And appreciating that the circulation is going to be perfectly parallel, who can tell me where the flow is coming from on this given chart? Don't be shy. Yes, buy that lady a beer. Yeah, so southwest. So that's kind of what this chart's all about. Just looking at these lines, figuring out that the circulation is going to be perfectly parallel, and then maybe focusing in on how tightly packed these lines are, right? So again, the analogy with a topo map is when we have tight lines, we have a steep gradient, we're talking about really steep terrain. In this case, we have a really strong pressure gradient, so that's going to equal really strong circulation, really strong flow. So in this case, we've got a southwest flow. We're coming in off the ocean, that means moisture, and we're starting to dip into a little bit of mild air, but not too warm. So southwest flow for these parts is bang on. This is what I'm hoping we're going to get in about a week from now. Okay, so 500 millibar, all about the flow, and we're gonna break down these flow patterns for you, so that you feel empowered by them, because it's really good stuff. So I would say 60-70% of the time, again, our weather comes in right off the ocean, which is fantastic for us in Western Canada, because all of our mountain ranges are aligned perpendicular to that, right? We've got our insular mountains on Vancouver Island, which actually dip below the ocean and continue on Haida Gwaii, which are more or less perpendicular to that westerly flow. We've got our big bad coastal mountain range. We've got our kind of lee side interior plateau. And then boom, we're back into the mountains, right? We got our Monashees, our Selkirks, Purcells, and the big bad Rockies. So anything coming from the west is interacting with all those mountain ranges, and it's really good. So if you wake up in the morning, you bring up your new favorite chart, the 500 millibar chart, and you look at those black lines, and you see something of a westerly flow, giddy up, that's good. As it starts swinging around to the south, so maybe like that example I showed you just a slide ago, your lines are orientated more southwest to northeast. This is an even better flow for a couple reasons. The fact that it's coming in from the south is going to be packing a little bit more warmth, but a warmer air mass can contain more moisture, so we're going to get more snow. And then there's this nice little corridor here that's pretty uninterrupted in terms of terrain, right? So we can sneak in through Juan de Fuca, through the Cascade Mountains and the southern coastal mountains, little gap here, and then we're pretty much unimpeded until, boom, we hit the Monashees and the southern Selkirks. Okay, so that's another reason why this southwest flow is kind of magic around here. Wishy talked about the big storms we had early in the season, all due to a southwest flow. particularly if it's preceded by cold air, right? So when we had that super freeze, -25 down here in the valleys, -37 up in the peaks, anytime that cold air is locked in and then that southwest flow comes in, that's like the magic, okay? So hopefully we'll get more of that. As you start cranking the dial down towards the south, well, now you're talking atmospheric rivers, right? And we've already had way too many of those this winter. But yeah, because you're tapping into like a true tropical air mass, like down from the equator, super warm, can hold tremendous amounts of moisture, but again, way too hot. So there's no escaping this one. The freezing levels are gonna rock up to like 3,000 meters. And yeah, we don't want these. These are bad. Northwest flow, sometimes also referred to as the skier's flow. An old colleague of mine dubbed that nickname. We're still coming in off the ocean, so we've got lots of moisture, but we're tapping into a colder air mass. And when we start driving cold air aloft, that generates what we call an unstable atmosphere. So yeah, I can't really think of, actually, yeah, no, we had some on Tuesday this week. Do you guys notice those like snow pellets that were kind of coming in bursts on Tuesday? Really short and intense. That was like a textbook northwest flow. So very convective, very on again, off again, and can produce some really interesting, fluffy, light snow, but highly variable. So this one's a really tricky one. We have an old saying in meteorology, never trust a northwest flow, just because they're really tricky to forecast. This is the kind of day where maybe Whitewater gets 30, and down in town it was bluebird all day, or vice versa, okay? So highly spatially variable and tricky, but a great flow. I would say these are kind of my two favorite, if I could pick. As you crank it up to the north, I mean, again, with the flow, the game you're playing is like, well, what air mass is coming at me with this particular circulation? And in this case, we're bringing in air from the Arctic, right? And if you've ever been up there, your skin gets super dry, your hair's all staticky. There is no moisture up here in the winter, right? So when we get these Arctic outbreaks, we get these north flows, it's just high and dry, right? And this is what we had in the middle of January with those -25 temperatures. It's just like wicked cold, and you know, a mouse's fart would have more moisture in it than this, right? There's just no moisture. And then this easterly flow, pretty rare. We don't get much of that. Wishy was talking about those strong easterly winds today. It was more of a north flow, kind of just meandering into an easterly flow, but a true east flow coming east across the rocks. We sometimes see them in the spring. They're kind of funky and they're kind of rare. So yeah, don't hold your breath for this one. These are, you know, this whole zone is good, is go time. So yeah, flow, it really is all about the flow. And I really encourage you to try and zone in on that when you're looking at your weather, okay? So just a summary here with examples. Hopefully you guys can squint and make that out. But up here in the top left corner, we've got lines that are orientated kind of north to south there. So that would be your northerly flow coming down from the Arctic. So super dry, super cold. There's the northwest flow, that convective, kind of difficult to forecast, tricky one, but pretty good, generally speaking. The westerly and the southwesterly, you know, snow, more snow, really good. And then the dreaded kind of Pineapple Express, or now we call them atmospheric rivers. So when we're talking about the flow, these are the questions you should be asking yourself. How much moisture is coming at me? If it's coming in off the ocean, you definitely have some. If it's got a little bit of a southwest tinge, you've got more. What are my temperatures and freezing levels going to do? Because the idea here is really, in meteorology, it's all about pattern recognition, right? I've been doing this for 20 years now, and after a while, you start seeing storms that look pretty similar. It's never exactly the same, which keeps it interesting. But you're always kind of asking yourself, okay, well, what air mass is coming at me? How much moisture? And what are the freezing levels going to do, right? So in this, sometimes you'll read the synopsis, and we're talking about a zonal flow. Zonal is like due west, due east. We had a little bit of that a week ago. But as soon as you're tapping into something with a north component, you can expect your freezing levels to drop. Makes it pretty easy. Freezing levels at valley bottom. As you get into this, Wishy was talking about, you know, the models suggesting a bit more of a southwesterly. We will start to see the freezing levels creep up with that. And then with this guy, again, skyrocketing, okay? I like to play this game of applying the flow to the terrain, and that's where it gets tricky. but you're starting to now take that flow and apply it to your terrain, as I like to say. Okay, so you're visualizing your, your valley. How is it orientated versus the flow? Is it going to be upslope and generate even more precip, or is it going to kind of be downslope where you've decided to play? How fast are things moving? I talked about looking at the spacing of those black lines. So again, when they're tightly packed, you got a strong pressure gradient, you got a strong flow, and things are going to just be changing that much more. Again, the two good storm cycles that Wishy talked about this winter that we've had, we had some nice tightly packed lines for like a week at a time. And since then, it's pretty quiet. And then, of course, with that strong flow comes strong winds, okay? So yeah, again, this is the magic one. This is the one you kind of want to look for daily around these parts. So let's rewind. Wishy talked about, the early season and just how darn slow it was. And this is a satellite animation, again, water vapor. So we're just looking at the amount of water vapor. And again, I just love these circulations because if you stare at them for a bit, your eye will be drawn to a couple things. My eye is drawn to this guy, so we can see it spinning counterclockwise. Lo and behold, that's a little low that was parked off the coast of California. But notice how it's not moving inland. It was just stationary, right? So we've got that first low. And then the circulation over us was just due to this big honking high, right? So we had this high that was parked over the interior. Again, this is early, end of November. And any moisture that was trying to come at us was just being deflected north and way up and around and then back down into eastern Montana, okay? And then if you squint, you can kind of pick out another counterclockwise circulation over here. This is something we call an omega block because it resembles the Greek letter omega. And these are super stubborn. Once you see this setup, never good situation. But this is essentially what explained our prolonged dry spell in the early season, okay? Another example here, complete opposite end of the spectrum, was this these atmospheric rivers, and really there was 3 of them back to back to back. It was absolutely insane. We kind of got away lucky. I mean, Wishy talked about the fact that we were above zero for like 72 hours. West side of Vancouver Island picked up 800 millimeters of rain in 3 days. That's this much rain, okay? Had that happen around here, yeah, we'd all be biking and beaching and there'd be no snow left. The Alpine and Whistler picked up like 200 mils of rain, so they lost a tremendous amount. But hopefully you can see here that circulation and just that really strong southerly flow. So lo and behold, we're bringing in moisture and heat from the tropics like straight pipe, right? And this is just a textbook. I remember loading up the satellite image that morning and just being like, whoa, that's juicy and that's really warm and it's really bad. So yeah, all about the flow. It can really tell you so much about the weather that's coming. And then once you know the flow and you're starting to think, okay, freezing levels, moisture content, then you go to a model and you try and confirm what you're seeing. So the idea is that you're not just like blindly approaching a model because they don't always get it right. And if the model's telling you -10 and puking snow in this circulation, you know that the model's out to lunch, right? All right, so pull out your phones and take a picture of this and maybe print it if people still do that. Or just star it on your phone, come back to it later this winter, and it's just a really nice summary of all those different flow patterns and what they mean. So Wishy was talking about today what was being observed at Whitewater, and that was kind of this, it wasn't a true Arctic outbreak. I mean, it's cold out there, but it's not wicked cold. It's kind of what we'd call a modified Arctic circulation. So it was a bit of a north flow, but coming in with an easterly flavor. It's been interesting talking to operators who have been working around these parts for 10, 20 years. They've noticed in the last like 3 to 5 years, there's a lot more higher frequency of these easterly wind events, which, yeah, it's not great because they really move the snow around. And as Wishy was saying, it takes snow from the northeast aspects and deposits them on the southwest aspects, so a bit of a reverse loading pattern. And that catches a lot of kind of recreationalists off guard, right? Because you're usually thinking, oh yeah, the north aspects, those are the wind slabby areas. But in this type of flow, complete backwards, right? It's a bit of a mind mess. You gotta kind of reconfigure your mental map in there. But yeah, if you can just pick out the flow in your weather analysis, it'll set you up for success. So then, as I was saying before, you want to try and bring that bigger circulation, because we're pretty big picture still, right? We're talking about the flow, super large scale, coming in off the northeastern Pacific. And then Google Earth is really your friend when it comes to this stuff in geeking out. I started my forecasting career in Montreal. That's where I'm from originally, 20 years ago, and did like 4 years out there and thought I was getting pretty good. Saw a couple storms go through, and then I kept begging to come to BC where the mountains are. And my new mentor was like, yeah, put all that East Coast weather stuff aside, and he gave me an atlas. And he's like, study the terrain until you figure out, the majority of our mountain ranges and how complicated it is. It's really all about topography here. If you Google complex terrain, you kind of get a result of the interior of BC. So here's our favorite ski hill, good old Whitewater. And if you look at the orientation there of the Apex Creek, so this is the road that comes up. We've got White Queen and all this zone up here on your left, and then there's a nice right-hand turn. And essentially the atmosphere is a fluid, right? It's just like a river in the sky, and it's going to kind of flow and follow that terrain. So whoever chose to build a ski resort at Whitewater back in the day, we're onto something. It's just a beautiful catcher's mitt from that southwest flow that brings in the moisture and still not too warm, right? And we have the benefit of the parking lot being up around 1,200 meters. So we can get away with those southwest flows, and just some beautiful convergence and funneling, and then into this catcher's mitt. So again, that's why southwest really works for us at Whitewater. Versus that northwest is going to kind of come up the backside of White Queen, up the 5 mile drainage. We'll see more higher accumulations at the head of 5 mile in that kind of northwest flow versus the southwest. But I think you guys see where I'm going here. In the westerly, it kind of comes up and over, a little more subsident, so typically not as much snow in that due westerly flow. And then the south flow is you're kind of coming up the backside, up Catuttle and whatnot. And some upslope enhancement, but again, it's just way too warm, right? So this is the game you want to play, and this is the game I play when I'm providing training to various ski operators. I'm like, hey, send me your run list and their tenure, and then I just like geek out for a couple days and figure out, okay, well, how is this flow, this bigger picture flow, going to apply to the terrain? So if you've got your little secret stash, this is the game you're going to want to play. You're like, hey, I noticed when the air is coming from that direction, we tend to get hammered, and that location gets nothing. And really that's what it's all about. So, there you go. That's the flow. I'm going to take another sip of beer. You should too. So, once we're done with the flow, and you've kind of wrapped your brain around there, and hopefully you're going to reference that little photo you took, the next thing I do is, why not come and read the synopsis, right? So, these two forecasters spent like a few hours figuring this out, and they're just giving it to you on a silver platter. So just take a couple minutes, read this, and then don't forget to scroll down underneath the 500 millibar chart. There's a little bit more text down there that's going to help you confirm what you guessed on your 500 millibar chart, right? So you're like, yeah, I think it's a west flow, and then you read the text, you're like, yeah, nailed it, or whoa, I'm way off. I got to call that guy Matt back. So yeah, flow, synopsis, and then ultimately you kick it down to the day 1 and day 2 tabs. So when we built this thing, it was meant to be used left to right. So again, the landing page is you come to the synopsis, and then you kind of start working your way left to right. So you'll have your surface charts here. And again, the forecaster's taken some time to slap some descriptions. So up north, we're just talking about sunny with some valley fog in the morning. It's been howling on the coast in this pattern the last few days, like outflow winds, 60 to 80 through Howe Sound kind of idea. And then, yeah, down here we're just looking at cloud and a chance of flurries. Notice that these charts are always issued in 2 time steps. So we always have a 4 a.m. and a 4 p.m., which is awesome because it gets you through your operational day, as we call it. So heading out the morning, getting your boots on, you kind of know what to expect. And throughout the day, by sundown, you can kind of figure out what's going to happen. So every day there's 2 of these charts, one above the other. So there you have it. Global scale, synoptic scale, and then you're going to come down to this scale. Okay, so try and resist that temptation of just going straight to windy or spot WX. Do a little bit of homework and then get here. Okay, so let's talk about these 2 scales, these 2 tools rather, and just kind of some pro tips when you're using this. Okay, so lift your hand up if you've ever used spot WX. Yeah, it's a pretty commonly used tool. Super rad. What Garth does is he just knows where to look. It's all data that's freely available, paid for by taxpayers, but he knows how to find the straight pipe in through the back door to Environment Canada. Supercomputer lives in Montreal, and so he just downloads all the raw model output, as we call it. Okay, and then does the same thing in the States. Their supercomputer resides in Boulder, Colorado, so he just downloads massive amounts of data and then makes it ingestible by you folk in a pretty way. And most often the question becomes like, okay, well, which model should I use? Which one's the best, right? Again, in this day and age, it's hard to find a bad model. I tend to poop on the GFS quite a bit. It's got issues. It's often too snowy and too cold, so if you're looking for some hope, maybe look at the GFS. But really, you'll notice here that we're talking about resolution, so 2.5 kilometer, 10 kilometer, 15 kilometer, and notice that as the resolution gets coarser and coarser, you're getting further out in time, okay? When we talk about model resolution, we're talking about the chunks, the size of the chunks of the atmosphere that the model's chopping it up into, right? So we've got this 3-dimensional space that is the atmosphere, and basically we're chopping it up into all these cubes, which in the case of the global model here, the GDPS, is 15 kilometer resolution. So we're 15 kilometers by 15 kilometers by 15 kilometers, right? So if you have a pretty large cube like that, the model's like, okay, I can calculate that out to 10 days. But if you chop that cube up into small little chunks, 2.5 kilometers by 2.5 kilometers by 2.5, you're like, whew, I gotta do way more calculations, right? Like trillions. And so it can't do as much heavy lifting. It's only gonna go out to 2.5 days. Okay, so that's always the trade-off. Resolution, higher resolution, you're getting more accurate forecasts, but only out to 2.5 days. Whereas a coarse resolution model, you can go out way further, but generally less accurate, okay? So yeah, lo and behold, one of my favorites is this high resolution. You'll notice DPS, that stands for Deterministic Prediction System. That just means that you're looking at one single model. So yeah, the HR, the high res, and the regional, I would say are my 2 go-tos for Environment Canada. And then from the US, the NAM. This NAM model tends to do really well around these parts. This HRRR is pretty interesting. It stands for Hourly Rapid Refresh. So typically these models come out every 6 to 12 hours. The HRRR comes out every single hour. So if you're really like jonesing and chomping on the bit, you can watch a new run of this model every hour. All right. So yeah, just to hit home on how these models see terrain, because terrain makes up a big part of weather and what generates our weather. Here's just an example of this GDPS at 15 kilometers. So we'll take, the beautiful southern Selkirks here, pretty complex terrain. The GDPS is like, whoa, hey, I'm just 15K. I can't get too fancy. I'm going to drop this giant cube on your terrain and just smooth it right the hell out, okay? So by doing so, maybe you've got peaks that are like 2,300 kilometers or 2,300 meters down to valley bottom at like 500 meters. But again, it's just going to average that right out, okay? So if you're going to drop your pin either in Windy or Spot WX right here in downtown Nelson, where our elevation's 535 meters, you're not going to get a forecast for that because it's trying to smooth out the whole valley, right? So it's going to actually give you a forecast for 1,200 meters, which is why if you go into Windy or Spot WX and you look at a forecast for Nelson, again, you're going to get a forecast for like 1,000 meters, and so it's going to be way too cold and way too snowy, okay? So keep that in mind when you're dropping your pin around. In fine print, you'll be able to see what the actual elevation that you're getting from the model, okay? So coarse resolution models are going to be worse because of this, versus the high res model with these smaller cubes, higher resolution. You're going to drop your pin here, and maybe your peak is like 1,200 meters. You're going to get a forecast for like 1,150, way closer to reality. You drop your pin up here, you'll get a forecast closer to the peak of what you're after, okay? Is that pretty clear? Starting to see some tired eyes. All right, speed it up. Windy, 9 kilometers for the free version. And that's what's so amazing about Windy, is that they give it to you for free. This is like the best model in the world. I work for the Wildfire Service. We looked into getting our hands on this. They wanted $200,000 a year. We were like, yeah, we'll just use Windy. Admittedly, we were going to get it at a higher resolution, like down to 3 kilometers. But again, the 9 kilometer version on Windy is awesome. I pay for the Pro model. It's like $30 a year. I'm not sure whether it's worth it. But yeah, it's really great. So pro tip with this guy, when you come onto this, again, I really encourage you to use it on a laptop versus a cell phone, because it's hard to make it hum and sing. But there's this tiny little button down at the bottom here that says compare. People skip over that quite a bit. If you click on that, you'll get to compare 4 or 5 different models, boom, at once in a nice, easy to compare screen. We call this a poor man ensemble. It's not truly an ensemble model, but it allows you to scan up and down really quick. So if you're wondering, hey, when's that cloud going to come in? You know, you're like, oh, look at that. It's coming in Sunday at 5 a.m. according to the Euro model. This model, the Icon, has it coming in way earlier. You know, this guy too. So, it looks like, you know, these 3 models are in good agreement regarding the cloud. So maybe I'm going to ignore this guy and focus, you know, more on this. So just really quick scan of like cloud cover, temperatures, winds. You know, when I'm seeing 4 or 5 models in really good agreement, that increases my forecaster confidence. And I'm like, easy peasy. Whereas sometimes the models, you'll see some pretty flagrant differences, particularly when it comes to winds and precip, okay? So yeah, use this compare button, really rad. The other thing I like to do, I mentioned earlier that models really struggle in complex terrain. And so if you're putting your pin at the bottom of the valley, you're gonna get some really whack stuff. What you can do in Windy on the right-hand side here is there's this little slider button, and you can actually slide that up to like ridgetop, so roughly 3,000 meters. And I much more trust the models up here than versus down here. Okay, so I'd rather look at the winds and the precip up here and kind of mix it down into tree line and valley bottom than do the reverse. Look at valley bottom and try and extrapolate upwards, okay? So that's a quick little tip you can do. So yeah, let's practice this flow together. Pull out your phones again, unlike what your high school teacher told you. And yeah, go to your favorite website, avalanche.ca/weather. And we're going to look at how the flow is going to change here in the next couple days. So yeah, once you get to the landing page, all you have to do is scroll down a little bit, and you'll find that 500 millibar chart. And then using these little triangle arrows, you can kind of advance forward in time. So go to 45 minutes from now, 10 p.m. this evening. And we're going to focus in on these black lines, right? So these are your new favorite lines. So I've bolded them out there for you to make them jump out at you. And then we kind of want to find a synoptic feature. So we're looking for the H's and the L's, the highs and the lows. So we talked about this bad boy up here in the Yukon before. That's a pretty prominent feature. They're not going to always jump out at you like this. But yeah, giant ridge. And then who can tell me how the winds flow around this thing? Is it clockwise or counterclockwise? Clockwise, nice one. Buying you beer, buddy. So, lo and behold, we've got this circulation around this big ridge. And so where's our flow coming in from today? Yeah, northeast, right? You guys think there's any moisture in there? Was it nuking out there today? No, we had like little spurts of cloud. And that was from this little guy trying to push his way up. But this ridge is just so strong that there's no way this ridge is going to punch northwards, okay? So hopefully you can see how quick that was. Kind of stare at the lines for a bit, figure out what the circulation is. Yeah. Because of the ridge. So without exception, a ridge, good little trick is if you use your left hand, high pressure, thumbs up, and then look at how your fingers are turning. So we've got our high pressure ridge, thumbs up, blue skies, and just always left hand. Circulation is going to be clockwise, okay? Yeah, good question. How about we step forward a couple steps in time there and go all the way till Saturday. So again, I'll just bold these black lines for you, make them a little more obvious. And so what are we talking about now? These little circles out in the ocean are two lows. They're pretty weak. Are these lines kind of tightly packed together? Are they like exciting? No, they're pretty slack. This is what we call a slack flow. Right? We don't have much of a gradient here, but we've got something. And it's no longer that northeast flow. What's our circulation in this case? Come Saturday night. I heard it. Yeah, south-southwest, right? So these two lows are spinning counterclockwise, and our circulation is kind of coming in from the south, right? So we're bringing in some moisture, but we're bringing in a little warmth too. So that's what Wishy was showing you guys before. We saw that creeping freezing level. I mean, we're not talking excessive heat, but definitely a bit of a warming trend from where we've been. And then the gray is cloud cover, but I'm not seeing much green, right? So we're gonna get cloudy. We'll probably get a bit of snow, but nothing tremendous, but it's a change. And we can talk more about change here in a bit. Okay, we're getting there, folks. So yeah, just a couple best practices when we're talking about spots. Often the question becomes, well, where should I drop my pin? And what I really hate seeing is people will like drop their pin in windy and then bookmark it. And so all they ever do is look at the same spot, but that's, again, kind of dangerous to do because without appreciating the bigger picture, you might be dropping your pin just right outside the precipitation envelope, as we call it. And so what you're doing is you're assuming that the model nailed it and the snow versus no snow limit is perfect. And so you might be heading out the door and you're like, hey, you went to that geeky weather guy's talk the other night. What did he tell you? He's like, oh yeah, just drop my pin and look, this is what we're gonna get. It's gonna be bluebird, don't even worry about your puffy. And then, you get out there and it looks more like this. Because without knowing, maybe your pin was so close to the NAR and you had no appreciation for the bigger picture. So one way to circumvent this is to just move your pin around. And this takes like literally seconds. You drop your pin, look at the forecast, you're like, oh, what if I go drop it over in Kootenai Pass or maybe London Ridge or maybe over to the Valhallas. So yeah, a good practice is what we call the poor man ensemble. Just move your pin around. Keep looking at the exact same model, but just, again, move it from the west side of the valley to the east side. And when you're seeing consistency amongst the different spots, that's really good, okay? That means the model has a good handle on things and, conditions are gonna be relatively uniform, but I can guarantee in those northwest flows, as you move your pin around, you're gonna get like 46 centis over here and 2 over there, and then 15 over here and 0 over there. And so when I see the values jumping all over the place like that, I'm like, whoa, the models are really struggling, and that's a really great piece of information to take home for the day, okay? When we bring it back to the avalanche hazard, if you get 30 centis of snow, your avalanche hazard is gonna look quite different than if you get 2, right? So as you head out for the day, you're gonna kind of wanna track things and just, play out a couple scenarios because the models are having a rough time and things are gonna be a lot more rock and roll. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Use that forecaster funnel approach. Try and play around with that 500 millibar chart. There's just a ton of information in it. Figure out what the flow is, and then apply it to your terrain. Okay, so I gave one example of whitewater, but really depending on where you're recreating, you can kind of play with the flow and see how it's going to interact with your terrain. And then just really use those point forecasts kind of cautiously and intelligently. Compare different models and move your point around, okay? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. We good? We want to go home now? No. All right.
Tell us it's going to snow.
Don't shoot the messenger. Is it doom and gloom? No. I am an endless optimist. So Jay showed a graph at the beginning of his talk that was quite similar to this. It was for Redfish Creek, just on the North Shore here. And super similar, right? This line was tracking way below normal. This just came off the press today from the River Forecast Center. This is the provincial average, okay? So if we went and calculated all the snowpacks around the province and compared them to historical normals, or records around here go back around 50, 60 years, again, misery likes company. At least we're not in this all by ourselves. Everyone sucks right now, okay? This is a record-breaking year. So there's that. We're here to talk about State of the Snowpack, but when we're talking long-range forecasts, inevitably we go look at the state of the oceans. And this is where the good news lies. So this is what we call a sea surface temperature anomaly chart. So using satellites, we can look at the temperature of the ocean, and then we compare it to historical averages for this time of year. So this is just from yesterday, Valentine's Day. And here we are, Vancouver Island. So this is the northeastern Pacific here. And I was quite happy to see this. Earlier in the winter, this was like a sea of orange and bright red. Like it was cooking hot out there. The silver lining to these atmospheric rivers is they really shake up the oceans. They really help dissipate that heat and create what's called upwelling. So we draw that cold water to the surface. So this is great. No longer do we have a hot tub sitting off the coast. We're definitely still a little bit warm, but not cooking hot. And then if we look down along the equator, just off the coast of Peru here, this is where we measure and track El Nino or La Nina, right? So La Nina is all about colder than normal waters. Of course, you all know we've had a pretty strong El Nino this winter. And again, had we looked at this chart just 3 weeks ago, before the ARs, we would have seen red, like waters that were 4 to 5 degrees above normal, super cooking hot. And that signal is also starting to fizzle pretty rapidly. So that's good news, right? We'll take it. And this is how fast it's been fizzling. So this is the equatorial Pacific, looking at the temperature anomalies, and this is the territory that we were in, last summer, June, July, and then boom, right around Christmas, like cooking hot, right? But look at how fast it's declined. Like I've rarely seen this. I've been staring at these charts for like 15 years. Super rapid decline in the heat, which is awesome. And a little teaser, spoiler alert, you may have heard we are heading to La Nina next winter. And this is a huge change. At the beginning of the winter, they were forecasting double El Nino, so 2 El Nino winters in a row. That is no longer the verdict. So this is a whole bunch of, I'm stoked. We can't have another. Yeah. So this is just a whole collection of fancy international models, and you can see the trend here. The thick green line is what we call the ensemble mean, and so this is where we currently are, 2 degrees warmer than normal in the equatorial Pacific. This is the threshold for El Nino, so we're still El Nino here until about here, so till the end of March, and then we're into El Nada, as we call it, neutral zone, and then look at this. This is next winter here. And there's pretty good agreement that we're heading into La Nina, so let's hold on to that. June skiing. And then looking out here next 2 weeks, and that's kind of as far as I go in terms of putting myself out there. There's so much going on in the atmosphere, in the oceans, but the 2 week window we can be relatively confident, particularly in terms of trends. So this is one of my go-to products. It's called the North American Ensemble Forecast. So we're no longer looking at a single model. This is actually 42 models together. And the key here is to look at trends, okay? Don't get too caught up in the exact values because this is a really coarse resolution. But here in the top, we've got temperature over the next 2 weeks, so bringing us right out to the leap day. And you can see that warming trend that Wishy was talking about. So definitely a little bit of warming here, and that's okay because we're not getting crazy warm. But then what I'm really happy to see is pretty steady temperatures. So that speaks to that zonal flow, that westerly flow, so that's good. I don't see any like +10s and +15s in here, kind of just seasonal temperatures. And so here's the bits of precip here, the scales on the left. You know, this is nothing too exciting. We're getting like, you know, maybe 3 to 5 over the next 4 days here, Sunday through next Tuesday. But then what I find more exciting is this. I'm seeing a really clear signal here for a more active pattern, near seasonal temperatures. So yeah, I think end of February here we're gonna, you know, dribs and drabs, fill it in. I'm liking this versus like a flat line, which is what I've seen a lot earlier this winter. If you really want to set yourself up, here's the Euro model going all the way through March. And you just see a lot of white on this chart, so people are like, oh, white, is that a bad thing? That's near normal, okay? And what is near normal? So I went digging through the climate records this morning, and normal in March at Whitewater is 150 centimeters. Down in Valley Bottom is 13 centimeters, because you get more rain. Roslyn, 39, Revy, Village, 20 centimeters. So if we can get a normal March, that'd be great. And then a little top up maybe in April. So that's the long-term forecast, like a month out. That's getting a little shaky. And then if you want to believe the GFS, the Great Frickin' Snow Model, which again always overdoes it, but hey, we got to look for some hope. There's the Selkirks and the Columbias, and that turquoise there is inches. This is the forecast out to the 3rd week of March, and we're talking 20 to 24 inches. You know, so roughly 50 to 60 centis. So yeah, hey, let's hold on to that one. I will say I found a bunch of models that were like quite a bit starker than that. I was like, I can't show them that. I'm not showing those tonight. You promised. Yeah, or your money back. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, people. I'm going to hang around here for a bit, so if you want to ask a question here or down there, it's all good. Want to wrap it up there, Wiggles? Yeah. Oh, we're going to do a draw here. There's some fancy goggles. And some other goodies.
Thanks so much to Matt for giving us his knowledge. And thanks to Wishy as well for his expertise. And thank you, everyone, for coming on out. So let's draw some prizes. I got 4 hats here that I'll start off with, and then we'll get into the more bigger things. Alrighty, here we go. First ticket. 170120. 120. Anyone? I'll wait. You got it? 120? Did you get tickets? If you purchase online, you have to get raffle tickets. Oh, sorry, you have to. Okay, hold on 1 second here. Okay, and the next one here, drum roll. 125. 125. Who's got 125? Oh, you got it. There. Look at that. Look at the draw. Zero 57. 057. Would you like a fleece hat or a tee? Alrighty, and then we got 092. 092. Who's got 092? Nice. Oh, you got my favorite hat, the fleece. And then we got a lovely pair of Anon goggles here. Thanks to Anon for the support. 099. 99. Nice. And then for a lovely night at the Savoy Hotel. Here we go. 096. 096. Oh, nice. There we go. Oh, let me just see it. Thank you. All right, thank you everyone for coming on out. Next one is March 7th, and we're going to have even more to talk about. Enjoy the night, everyone. And thank you so much for coming out.